Welcome. So what I'm doing in this video is going through each of the different Warhammer 40k armies and comparing and contrasting how it would be to start as a new player with them on the tabletop. So I go through a SWOT chart, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and we go through each different faction and find out which one's the best. Stay tuned. What's helpful internally for Space Marines is they have a wide range of models and a wide variety of different tactics that they can use. They're also loved by Games Workshop. They're one of the core factions of the game, so they get updated regularly. What's harmful internally, though, is that they can also have too much choice on the other side of the coin. You can have a lot of different units and a lot of different models, which makes it difficult to choose what you want to take. Another harmful external thing is there's a bit of a stigma in certain groups for playing Space Marines. I don't think this exists everywhere, but I have seen it before in certain play groups. Strategy-wise, they're all-rounders with a medium model count. They have a brand new codex coming out, and their overall ranking is an A for starting out. What's helpful internally for Adeptus Mechanicus is they are cool. They're a neat faction that's different than a lot of the other Imperial factions, and they have some really interesting lore that I find really cool as well. What's harmful is they can be expensive, especially in points per model. They're extremely expensive dollar-wise, and they're weak right now. So my overall faction support for them is an F. Unfortunately, they do exist with overwhelming firepower. They have a high model count, and they are getting a new codex soon, so we'll see if that changes in the near future. Custodes. What's helpful internally is that they're survivable, and externally is that they're a strong faction as well. What's harmful internally is that they have, few things that are actually going wrong for them at the moment. They're actually pretty good. So there aren't very many. And what's externally harmful to them is that they're kind of a little bit up in the air in terms of they're getting a new codex soon, which is great. So you don't know what's going to happen. Their strategy is an all-around beatdown, and they have a low model count, especially with the Combat Patrol box. You can get some great value there. My overall ranking for them for starting out in 40k is an S. What's helpful internally for Grey Knights is that they're survivable, and they use a lot of cool psychic stuff. What's helpful externally is that they have a very base paint scheme that you can use for and apply for all the different models in the range. What's harmfully internally is that they don't have a codex yet, and this can apply to a lot of different factions, so you don't quite know what's up in the air with them yet. And what's harmful externally is that their range is a little bit limited as well in terms of the actual models. Their strategy is all around beatdown, and they have a low model count with an unknown time for a new codex. My overall ranking for them for starting 40k is a B. What's helpful internally for Imperial Knights is that they're a simple faction. They only have a few models compared to some other ranges. And what's helpful externally is that indeed they do have some really cool models as well. What's harmful internally is they lack depth, so they don't have a huge range. So, being able to be simple is good for starting out, but it can be harmful later on. And they also have a lack of support in that they don't get a huge number of models released at any one given point in time. Their strategy right now for Imperial Knights is to shoot them off the table with a very low model count. It's unknown when they're going to get a new codex, but there's some great options for buying and starting up Imperial Knights. So my overall ranking for them is an A. Imperial Agents are a bit of a strange faction. They're powerful, but they have a cool aesthetic as well. What's harmful is that they have a small range. They only have a small number of models. They're more of a support faction than a main faction, but at the same time, you can still run a lot of them. What's harmful externally also is that they lack viability. They have a strategy of being specialized in what they do with a low model count. They have an unknown time when they're going to get a new codex, so my overall ranking for them is unfortunately an F. Alright, Imperial Guard. What's helpful internally is that they're shooting focused, which is definitely a trend in this edition. A good trend, I should say. And what's helpful externally also is that they have a cool and very large range from which to choose from, and some cool models in there as well. Especially some big ones like Baneblades and stuff that can have a lot of points for a minimum dollar investment when you're starting out in 40k. What's harmful internally is that they lack that close combat, so just the other side of the coin there, and that they're mostly a horde army. Again, you can take a ton of Baneblades. That might make things a little bit different in terms of the model count being high, but at the same time, it typically is high. Shooting to the max makes sense, and they don't know when they're getting their next codex, so my overall ranking for starting a new faction in 40k is a D. What's cool about Sisters in a Battle is that they're a divergent factor in that they're also unique for being a part of the Imperium. What's also harmful is that a lot of the time, a lot of their stuff, and at least right now, as of making this video, is out of stock on the Games Workshop website. and they don't get a lot of support historically in terms of 40k, which is unfortunate as well. They're a bit of a mixed bag strategy with a medium model count. It's unknown when they're going to get their next codex, so my overall ranking for them is a D. What's helpful for Dark Angels is that they have themed lists built into the army itself. So you could take, if you wanted to, all bikes, or you could take Terminators, whatever you wanted to do. What's helpful also externally is that they get a lot of support and they have a new Primarch. What's harmful internally for them is that there's a bit of a bias against Space Marine factors. Again, not all of them have this, but I have seen groups with this. And what's also harmful externally is that, they're Space Marine neighbors. So Space Marines have a lot more than them. But if you want to pick a certain faction and use them, then Dark Angels is definitely great to use. Their overall strategy is beatdown. They have a medium model count. Their new codex is coming out soon. My ranking for them would be a B. Yeah, what's helpful internally for Deathwatch is they have access to a large amount of weaponry that's specific for Xenos scum. What's also helpful is that they have a really cool theme and really cool looking models. Unfortunately, they have a small range in their Space Marine neighbors, so they may not get updated as much. They are specialized in what they do. They have a medium model count with an unknown timeline for their new codex. My overall ranking for them, for starting out in a new game of 40k, would be a C. What's helpful internally for Blood Angels is they have a balanced approach to combat, and they have a cool aesthetic. What's harmful internally is that maybe their strength isn't as high right now, and that their range is maybe a little bit limited in terms of actual Blood Angel models. They do have access to a lot of Space Marine stuff, though, which makes their range quite expansive as well. Their strategy is overall beatdown with a medium model count. It's unknown when their new codex will be. My overall ranking for Blood Angels is a B. What's helpful internally for Space Wolves is they have a focus. So as a new player, you can have something to draw all of your energies upon. And they have a Primarch on the way, hopefully. They actually have one that's alive, so that's kind of a hope for the future for them. What's harmful internally is that indeed they don't have that Primarch. So they don't have it yet, but my hope would be that they would be one of the next ones to get one. And they also get some support, not from themselves, but they get some from the Space Marine range, which gets updated quite regularly as well. Their strategy is overall beatdown with a medium model count. It's unknown when they're going to get their next codex, and my overall ranking for starting for them in 40k 10th edition is a B. Black Templar. What's helpful internally is they have a cool range with some really interesting looking models. What's harmful is that and this is a personal bias, I'm not a fan of Black Templar, so I find them a little bit boring and lacking identity. Now, this can be completely wrong, but at the same time, that's just how I feel about them. Their strategy is that they're balanced and that they have a medium model count. They have an unknown time of when they're going to get a next codex. My overall ranking for them, with my bias being explicitly stated, is being a C. What's helpful internally for Death Guard is that they can be resilient at times, and they have a really cool model range. The problem is that they can be harmful internally in terms of their balance, and they might be weak externally compared to some other factions right now, which might discourage other players from starting with them. Their strategy is being resilient. They have a low model count, and it's unknown when they're going to get their next codex. My overall ranking for them is unfortunately a C. What's helpful internally for Thousand Sons is that they're survivable. They have pretty good invulnerable saves, and they have a really cool aesthetic that's kind of unique for 40k in general. Harmful internally is the cost for some of the models that they have there, and that they can be kind of boom or bust. This is just a trend that I found. They're either really good or really not so great. Their strategy is, again, to be Lords of the Psychic phase. They have typically a low model count, but that can change. It's unknown when they're getting their next codex, and my overall ranking for them for starting out in 40. What's helpful internally for World Eaters is they can be one-dimensional. They're close combat focused, which can be great for a new player just to have that one idea to focus on. And they have some high points that are, really good for starting out, especially if you have some of the bigger models, like the Lord of Skulls or Angron. What's harmful is they can also be one-dimensional. You might want to focus on shooting instead. It really depends on the player. And what's harmful externally is that they're new, so they don't have as much support as maybe some of the older, more established factions. Their strategy is to burn, main, kill. They have a medium model count. It's unknown when they're getting the next codex. My overall ranking for starting 40k for them is a B. What's good internally about Chaos Space Marines is they have a wide variety of different models to choose from. They're a very old faction, so they have a lot of models and a lot of rules to go with them. What's helpful externally, again, also is that their range. They have lots of stuff that they can use. What's harmful internally is they can be difficult to paint with all the different spikes and different ornate things that are all on their armor. That makes it more challenging for a new person coming to 40k, and they may suffer a little bit from a balance issue. They have a balanced overall strategy as well. They have a medium model count. It's unknown when they're getting their next codex, and my overall ranking for them is a B. Chaos Knights, what's helpful internally for them is that they're simple. They don't have a whole lot of models either, so they're, mono-focused, which is helpful for a new player coming to 40k. What's harmful is, on the flip side of the coin, is they lack depth. And what's also harmful externally is they lack support as well. They're kind of a newer faction to the game, not super new by any stretch of the imagination, but they usually lack a lot of support just because they have such few models within the range itself, so they don't have a lot of different roles for a lot of different things. They have a mixed bag strategy of close combat and shooting, with brigands and carnivores, etc., etc. They have a very low model count, which is great for a new player, and it's unknown when they're getting their new codex. My overall ranking for them is an A. Chaos Demons, what's helpful internally for them is that they're basically 4 kind of codexes in one. 5 if you can count Undivided as well, Be'lakor. What's helpful externally is that they have a large range as well, so there's lots that you can pick from in terms of what you want to do, in terms of your style. What's harmful internally is there might be some balance in between those different styles that is a little bit off, and there might be a little bit of cohesion that doesn't work or does work, depending on if you want to stay mono-focused or not. They have a varied strategy with a variable model count, so you can have tons and tons of little small guys, or you can have very few very large guys, and their codex is unknown as to when it's going to happen, and their overall ranking is a C. What's helpful internally for Eldar is that they're a strong index right now, and they get a lot of support rules-wise by Games Workshop. They seem to be a stronger army over time throughout the editions. What's harmful internally is that they can be complex, and they have a lot of old models that maybe need to be updated quite soon. Strategy is they're all-rounders, so they have some close combat and a lot of shooting as well. They have a medium model count with a new codex that's unknown and when it's going to happen. My overall ranking for them would be a B. What's helpful for Tau internally is their ranged focus, which can be helpful for a new player, is being able to shoot from afar. And they're understandable. They have a good grasp as to what their focus is as a faction. They do lack close combat, however, and they seem to be boom or bust in terms of their overall balance. Their strategy is shooting, shooting, and more shooting. They have a medium model count, which can vary quite a bit as well, depending on if you take a super heavy or not. And they have a new codex coming out soon. My overall ranking for them would be a B. What's helpful internally for orcs is that when you paint them, you can have kind of a chaotic paint scheme, which is great for new players. And they have a cool range from which to draw from. What's harmful internally is that they have a high model count typically, and they can be a little bit swingy rules-wise as to their power level. Their strategy is daka and close combat and shooting and everything. They also hit on, low ballistic skills, so that might be frustrating for newer players depending on the number of shots that you have. They have a high model count. Their new codex is coming out soon. My overall ranking for them is a C. What's helpful internally for Gene Stealer cults is they're very strong right now, and they replace their own models, which is great for a newer player, and that they don't seem to have any changes that are coming soon. What's harmful internally is they cost a lot of money per model that you're going to be putting out there versus the points they actually cost in the game, and they can be a source of frustration with painting. The strategy is to overwhelm and return. They have a very high model count, and it's unknown when they're getting their next codex. My overall ranking for them is an F. What's helpful internally for Leagues of Votann is they've been updated recently in terms of they're a new faction to the game. So they have a lot of kind of newness to them, which can be great for a newer player. They don't see that as much on the tabletop. What's harmful internally is they have a small range right now, and they seem to be having some balance issues in terms of the overall game. They have a mixed bag strategy with a medium model count. It's unknown when they're getting their next codex. My overall ranking for them is a D. What's helpful internally for Necrons is they can resurrect. And what's helpful externally is that their painting schemes tends to be almost a meme at how easy it can be for newer players, which is great if you're just starting out in 40k. What's harmful internally is there can be some internal balance issues, and that painting can be boring and you don't learn a lot. It just depends on your style and if you're interested in the painting aspect of the hobby as much as maybe some of the other armies. The strategy is they have a mixed bag of close combat and shooting. They have a medium model count. Their new codex is coming out soon. My overall ranking for them is an S. What's helpful internally for Dark Eldar is they have a lot of variety with their different units, and they have a unique look. What's harmful internally is they have a lot of lack of strength at the moment in terms of their weaponry, and they seem to be a little bit weak in terms of the overall meta. They have a mixed bag strategy with a medium model count. It's unknown when they're getting a new codex. My overall ranking for them is a C. And last, we have Tyranids. What's helpful internally is that they're new, and they have a lot of new models and a lot of new support from Games Workshop. They have a big, cool range that you can choose from in terms of a lot of big things, a lot of small things, lots of different options to choose from. What's harmful internally is that they have, few builds with which they can kind of run out there with, and that their painting can be frustrating as well, especially if you have a lot of smaller models to paint. They have a mixed bag strategy with a high model count, and their new codex is basically brand new. My overall ranking for them is an A. What do you think? Did I get anything wrong? Leave a comment below. Also, take a look at some of the other videos on my channel. If you like me, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.